Hello and welcome. I'm Georgette Knoll with the League of Women Voters of the Anoka Blaine Coon Rapids area. The League is known for its activity during election seasons. We have public forums for candidates and we register voters. One of the things that's less known about League is that we do studies. And we study issues that are important, social policy issues that are important to the community. And several years ago, we've studied immigration, and we have a policy on immigration, and it's become a hot topic this election season. And you can actually see our League of Women Voters national position if you go online to the League of Women Voters and just go under immigration policy. One of the reasons we do studies is so that we have a position that we can all agree on. Not all agree, we do it by consensus, so there is some disagreement. But our positions lead us to be able to do activity. And some of the things we do are lobbying, we write letters to the editor, we advocate. But one of the most important things we do is inform voters about social issues so that when they go to vote, they have enough information to make an informed decision. The last time we looked at our immigration policy was in 2008. And the policy is very long and is very complicated, but one of the ways to become more educated on it is to find out what's happening in our community. And in the Minnesota area and in the Twin Cities especially, one of the best places to find information on immigration and refugees and what's happening in the community is through the International Institute of Minnesota. And so tonight we've invited Corleen Smith to talk with us. Corleen is the Director of Immigration Services at the International Institute of Minnesota. She has over 15 years of experience working with immigration issues, specializing in the areas of refugee resettlement, permanent residency, and citizenship. In 2014, under her guidance, the International Institute assisted over 900 permanent residents work toward the goal of becoming naturalized citizens. In addition to her experience with refugees and immigrants, Corleen has a background in legal interpretation and education and has lived and worked in Guatemala and Mexico. Welcome, Corleen.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. Again, my name is Corleen Smith, and I work at International Institute of Minnesota. We are a nonprofit located in St. Paul, near the state fairgrounds. So if you happen to ride your motorcycle to the state fair this year, you parked right next to our building. We're kind of right in the middle of all the parking excitement of the state fair. So you are probably closer than you realized to the hubbub of refugee resettlement and citizenship and immigrants coming to Minnesota. This evening, what I'm hoping to talk with you about is kind of the big picture of what a refugee is, how they get here, the steps that they have to take to enter United States. Then I'm going to talk a little bit, bring it in a little bit, talk about International Institute and what our role is in helping refugees enter the United States and what we're helping them with after they arrive. And then, of course, I save the best for last, which is citizenship and immigration services, which is what I do at International Institute. So we'll finish up the evening by talking about how people become citizens and kind of what the whole process is that folks have to go through. So first, let's kind of talk about what a refugee is. If you think back to 1951, World War II had ended, and the UNHCR was talking about what the definition of a refugee is. There was a lot of refugee situations that were coming up at that time. So I put the definition up here on the PowerPoint. And what the UNHCR defines as a refugee is someone who has been forced to flee because of persecution, war, or violence. They have a fear of persecution based on their race, their religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a group. Even before our International Institute is working with refugees, we're actually working with them before they come to the U.S. And helping them with that process to enter Minnesota. if you think about the whole world, there's actually close to 16, probably more than that, million refugees worldwide. And a very small number of those are actually entering the United States. These are some recent pictures of refugee camps. This is in Kenya. And as you can imagine, these folks are probably staying in the refugee camps maybe for 5, 10, or even 15 years for a long period of time before they enter the U.S. Many of our clients that we see talk about these camps, and this is their home for many years before they make Minnesota their home. And this is also a refugee camp that's in Thailand. The overseas process that occurs, as you can see, there's a lot of words on that page, and basically what that comes down to is security checks. Lots of background checks that have to occur. Our government and a lot of different parts of our government are doing interviews to make sure that the person fits the definition of a refugee, that they do have a well-founded fear of persecution. We are, like I said, doing a number of different background checks. They also involve some screening, some medical screening that has to occur because of any kind of contagious diseases would prevent them from entering the U.S. potentially, or having to do waivers so that they could enter. They're also going through cultural orientation class. As you can imagine, if you're living in a refugee camp for 5, 10, 15 years, you may have never experienced an escalator or an elevator. You're maybe not familiar with how the light switch works or how the stove works. So they do a lot of classes even before they come to the U.S. about what to expect once they arrive in their new community. Before they enter the U.S., the refugee is also matched with a refugee resettlement agency, which is what International Institute does. So we have a national agency in Washington, D.C., and they are basically allocating refugees to different parts of the United States. We have a variety of sister agencies throughout the United States that do similar things to what we do. So they are looking for a good match for that refugee, making sure that either there's a community there to welcome them, maybe other Somali people living in that community, for example. And they're also making sure that there's a refugee resettlement agency like International Institute that's going to work with them once they make it to Minnesota. And of course, that final security check, even when they're coming through that airport, for example, in New York or Atlanta, and finally making it here to the U.S. So we talked about 16 million refugees around the globe, and a very small number of those actually make it into the United States. And those numbers are determined by the president. So every year the president is making a determination with the help of Congress to decide how many of those millions, and as you can see, it's not even a million, that are entering the United States. For the coming year of fiscal year 2017, the possibilities are 100,000. So that would start with our fiscal year now next month in October. So we will have to wait to see who the president is and what that person decides will the number be for refugees that will be coming into the U.S. So that 100,000, or for example, the previous year, that 85,000 is then distributed amongst all of the, well, I shouldn't say all of the 50 states, but a large number of different states in the United States. International Institute, of that 85,000, you could say, we welcomed 465 in our last fiscal year. And this year, that's ending now this month for our fiscal year, we're welcoming about 605 refugees. So 605 individuals coming from a wide variety of countries. The top countries on the map, if you can see, for our International Institute, for our agency, is Somalia at 176 and Burma at 216. So the refugee has made it through all of those security checks. They've passed their medical screening. They've had some cultural orientation classes. They get off the plane in Minneapolis, and most likely they'll see something like this. It's a big change, right? It's a big culture shift. Not only the snow, but also thinking about where you're living. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Cedar Riverside area. Cedar Riverside is an area off of Freeway 94 near Minneapolis. And this is where a large number of our refugee clients are living. There's a large number of East African and Somali populations living in that area. So they're going from basically a refugee camp to a very compact area with there's obviously lots of people in the refugee camp, but apartment dwelling is definitely different, I would say, than a refugee camp. When someone gets refugee status in the United States, that status is a very distinct, particular status that our government, our immigration services gives to folks. It's a status that they're given actually before they enter the United States, because you have to remember all that interview and processing is happening in the refugee camp or wherever they happen to be before they come to United States. So maybe they were not able to stay in Somalia, so they escaped to Kenya. And in Kenya, then, like I said, they're going through that interview process to enter the United States. Once they get here, they've got that refugee status, and right away they are authorized to work in the United States. They're right away they're eager to find a job and help support their family members. They're also eligible for public benefits. Again, most immigrants are not eligible for public benefits. It's a small portion of folks that are eligible for public benefits. And that's what I was trying to demonstrate a bit with the blue circle. If you think of immigrants as people who want to stay or plan to stay in the United States, refugees would be a small portion of that. International Institute, when the refugee enters the United States, if you can imagine you had to start all over again, what would you need help with? If you were going to a new place and you didn't speak the language, you would need help to find a house or an apartment. You would need to figure out how to put things in that apartment, like plates and cups and bedding and towels. International Institute helps with all of those things. We are required by the State Department to provide certain things and offer guidance and support for the first 90 days after a refugee arrives. So if you can imagine, 90 days goes by very quickly. 90 days, we've got to do housing. We have to take them to the doctor. We have a fabulous Department of Health. Minnesota Department of Health is great. We work together to make sure that refugee is getting to doctor appointments, getting all of their vaccinations. And of course, the kids need all those vaccinations for school. So that is happening within the first week. They are at the doctor. So they have a great Department of Health helping us with that. We also have employment counselors helping people to find jobs. And then again, we're offering cultural orientation classes, because very different, I would say, for cultural orientation classes in your refugee camp, where maybe you've maybe got 20, 50 people in the class. Some people are going to California, some people are going to Chicago, some people are going to Florida. So the cultural orientation classes that we offer, we're going to talk about snow. We're going to talk about walking on the ice. We're going to talk about, what kind of school system we have here and how our public assistance works. So it's a little bit more kind of refined information so that they'll really understand kind of what to expect in their first few months living in Minnesota. You may have also heard of other refugee resettlement agencies that do things similar to International Institute. So if you're familiar with Arrive Ministries, Catholic Charities, Lutheran Social Services, Minnesota Council of Churches, All of these are doing similar things as to what International Institute is doing, so we are all refugee resettlement agencies. The only difference that you may have noticed in the names is we are not affiliated with any denomination. We don't have any religious affiliation like the other refugee resettlement agencies do. And on a side note, you might remember if you read a few weeks ago in the Star Tribune, it was a Sunday article about everything that had to happen in 90 days for a newly arrived refugee family. That's very similar to what International Institute does. I think that was referring to the Minnesota Council of Churches. So if you checked out that article in the Star Tribune, very similar to what we do as well, helping clients, getting everything that they need, hopefully, in those first 90 days to give them a good start. But of course, a lot of our refugees hear great things about the United States. But, of course, it's a struggle. There's a lot of things that you've got to do, and you're starting over. So it's not going to be easy. We definitely know that. And we do work with our clients beyond our 90 days to help them with other things because, of course, we want them to be successful, become residents, citizens, and other ways that we are helping clients and our refugee folks are with English classes and also college readiness. So basically, from very beginning English to advanced English at the college level, we offer classes that people can come and learn English, improve their English skills, and we also help people train them for a job. So we have different training programs to help them get jobs, get better jobs. The picture on the left is a nursing assistant. So we have nursing assistant classes that are helping folks to be certified in the state of Minnesota. And as a certified nursing assistant, you are working in a nursing home, taking care of elderly folks with kind of daily care types of things. So that's one program that we offer. We also have a housekeeping class. It's on the right. And we started this 2-3 years ago. We were looking for helping women who had lower levels of English to get employed, and housekeeping seems to be a great fit because don't need necessarily as much English. And the women really enjoy the class because they're able to then get connected to hotels and get employed with hotels as housekeepers. And now many of them are actually going on to supervisory roles and supervising entry-level housekeepers in the hotels. So again, we've got our refugee resettlement area. We have English classes and helping people kind of get ready for college. We also have training programs there. And so by this time, if you're kind of thinking about the timeline and where people are kind of in their process as they're entering United States and starting over in the U.S., by now they've probably been here for a number of years. And that's where I step in and I start thinking about citizenship and time to apply for citizenship so that they can vote and become even more active members of their community. What I do at International Institute is immigration services and citizenship. Obviously, citizenship is a part of immigration, but it's such a big part of our immigration services that kind of like to pull it out and really focus on citizenship. This young lady is Kushi, and Kushi, I just want to highlight her. She is one of our refugee clients who's been with us for many years. I have to take out my cheat sheet here because she's done so many things. I have to say all of the fabulous things. She entered the U.S. in 1999. And she went through our nursing assistant program in 2002 and graduated as a nursing assistant. She was employed for about 14 years as a nursing assistant at the same location. So that to me is fabulous. That employer must have loved having her there for 14 years. After 14 years in the nursing assistant career, she decided that she wanted to go on to college, and so we started offering her college readiness classes. So college readiness classes, kind of a higher level of English to help her hopefully test out of some lower level of college classes so she can jump right into higher level classes and hopefully save some money. College readiness, she started to attend St. Paul College and was in the practical nursing program. She also did phlebotomy technician as well. And she also purchased a home in that time period. And this past summer, she became a licensed practical nurse. So now she is a licensed practical nurse. She's a homeowner. She's got kids. And most recently, she actually brought in her husband, and we helped him fill out his application for citizenship. So she's one of many success stories that we have at International Institute. But it shows, I think, that it's not a process that's going to happen from one day to the next. It's definitely not going to happen in the first 90 days. But with a lot of support and help, I think it's something that is definitely attainable. So let's think about immigration and kind of who is who according to immigration. You've probably seen or heard some of these words in the news: refugee, asylee, permanent resident, visitor visa. Someone maybe has temporary protected status, or maybe they're here undocumented. All of these different procedures, processes, vocabulary, they may or may not end up as someone becoming a citizen. You often hear maybe on the news that's not a path to citizenship, or that is a path to citizenship. So all of these words that are coming up here, not necessarily going to become a citizen, but let's talk about which of those is on the path to citizenship and who is actually going to get to become a citizen. Before citizenship, you've got to be a permanent resident. You've got to have a green card. So you talk about green card because it did used to be green. Then they updated it and it wasn't green, but everyone called it a green card so much, now it's a green card again. So it is green again. So you've got to have a green card. You've got to have permanent residency. Basically, there's kind of three big ways that someone can get a green card. Family. So that means I'm a citizen maybe and I marry someone. I can give them a permanent residency. I can do process and have them enter and get a green card. That's just one example of kind of different ways that a family member can give permanent residency or sponsor someone to get permanent residency. You can also have employment that's going to get you a green card. So maybe you have a special talent or knowledge that we can't find in the United States. We'll bring you in and we'll give you an employment visa. And after many years, then you will get permanent residency or green card as well. And then the last category, the last way to become a permanent resident is through humanitarian. So if you think back to earlier in the presentation, we were talking about refugees. Refugees is a humanitarian process. So refugees, after they have been here in the U.S. for 1 year, they're eligible for a green card, and they're on their path to citizenship. So once you've been a permanent resident, now you're starting to think about citizenship. Well, first you have to be a permanent resident for 5 years. So you're not going to get citizenship the minute you get off the plane. You've got to have permanent residency for 5 years. It's not how long you've been here, but actually how long you've had your green card or been a resident. There's also an age requirement. You have to be at least 18 to be a citizen. There is some citizenship for children if your parent is a citizen. There's kind of some other rules that go along with that. But most folks are doing citizenship once they turn 18. Immigration then says you have to have good moral character, which is their terminology, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And there's also some English requirements to becoming a citizen. Talk about that too. Okay, so requirements in regards to the English. You've got to have kind of 3 things for English requirements. You have to be able to write in English, read in English, and speak in English. What happens if you can't do one of those things? Well, there's some ways, there's some exceptions to the rule, some exemptions. some ways so that you wouldn't be required to have English to be a citizen. One is a medical waiver. So the doctor says, you know, this person has Alzheimer's, this person has post-traumatic stress, something that's going to prevent them from remembering, learning English history and government, reading and writing. So the doctor is going to fill out a form. Of course, it's immigration, lots of forms and paperwork to fill out. So there's a form to fill out for that. If you don't have a medical issue that would prevent you from learning English, history, and government, the other way is how long you've been a permanent resident and how old you are. So when I first did this clip art, now that I'm looking at it, the clock makes it seem like you only have to be a permanent resident for a few hours, I was thinking, but that's not really the case. You would have to be a permanent resident for at least 15 years and be 50 or 55. So there's kind of some different combinations. So I'll have clients that'll come to me and they'll be 50 and they won't speak any English, but they've only been a permanent resident for 5 years. So unfortunately, they don't qualify for that exemption. Again, it's the how old you are and how long you've been a resident for. You've got to have both of those items to qualify for that. So, and in that case, they could bring an interpreter with to the interview, and they wouldn't have to speak and write in English. Good moral character. So immigration is basically checking your background. They're making sure to see what you have in your background in regards to arrests, crimes, and then I leave it blank because there's a lot of other things that could fit in there. Are you paying your child support? Are you paying your taxes? Have you ever claimed to be a U.S. citizen and maybe voted, but you weren't a citizen? Lots of other things that could come up that immigration would say that disqualifies you from citizenship. Ways to fix that, depending on what it is, it could be reestablish good moral character. So that means start paying your child support, take care of your taxes. It could mean waiting to apply, getting your record clean for 5 years so that you don't maybe have a DUI on your record, for example. In some severe cases, you're not going to be eligible for citizenship, and you would unfortunately just keep your green card. Or in some cases, depending on the situation, you may be deported because you're not a citizen yet. And as I tell clients, with everything in the United States, it's about money. And it does cost money to be a citizen. You have to pay $680 for the process. So that has to be sent in with the application and all of the paperwork, $680. Recently, they started accepting credit cards, which was a big step. So people have kind of mixed ideas about receiving credit cards, but for our clients, it's actually been very helpful because for a lot of our clients, saving up $680 can be very challenging. If you don't have $680, can you still become a citizen? Yes. Immigration offers a fee waiver, and the fee waiver is basically based on these three things: public assistance, or if you're low income, or if you have a financial hardship. So immigration, for example, if you're getting food support or cash assistance, for example, from the county, something that shows a means-tested benefit, then we would give that evidence to immigration and ask them for free citizenship for the client. Or we would show their taxes, their 1040 tax papers, and show that they are low income according to some guidelines that immigration has. For example, a single person, no children, not married, would have to make under $17,000 approximately to qualify for free citizenship. Or if they have a financial hardship, which could be a variety of things. I've seen maybe if they have a severe medical issue and they're accumulating a lot of debt for some reason, something like that. financial hardship. My experience with financial hardship qualifying is a little bit more difficult than someone that's low income or public assistance. Then we get into how long it takes. So the client is going to come into International Institute. They make an appointment with myself or someone else on my staff, and we sit down with them one-on-one, and we fill out an application. The application right now is about 22 pages. 22 pages covers everything from who you're married to, who you were married to in the past, your kids, your jobs, your school, your addresses, all kinds of good moral character questions about, have you ever voted, or what organizations you're involved in, that type of thing. So we're helping them fill out that application, and we're explaining the process just like we're explaining it to you about maybe you're eligible for a fee waiver, maybe, are you ready for the English part of the test? So we're going through all of those requirements with them. We mail it in to immigration, and then we're working with them during that whole process to make sure that they're getting to all of their appointments and everything's going smoothly. So that involves mail, of course, and so they're going to get a receipt. They're going to have some fingerprints because, of course, immigration is doing a background check on them. And then they're going to have an interview and a test. And if they pass that interview and a test, then they have an oath ceremony. Has anyone ever been to an oath ceremony? Yay! Oath ceremonies are open to the public. And if you've never been, I would definitely encourage you to go. You can find the list of the oath ceremonies on the federal court website. So very interesting. If you're ever not feeling so positive about being an American citizen, go to one of those and you'll be very, very happy. Oath ceremony and certificate. So they're getting an official citizenship certificate at the end of that process to show that they're a citizen. So that whole process is 6 to 8 months, sometimes more, sometimes it can take a year. But for most people right now in the state of Minnesota, it's about 6 to 8 months. Think about how many people do you think have become naturalized citizens? So people that were not born in the United States, 18 and older. The most recent numbers from immigration are 2013. So in the whole country, how many people do you think have naturalized? It's close to about 800,000. I don't know if people think that's a high number or a low number. In Minnesota, what would we guess the number? We're not obviously California. We're kind of in the top. We're at about 10,000 or 11,000. The number kind of fluctuates a little bit each year, but it's usually around 10 to 12,000 each year. And if you think about which countries are represented in Minnesota, what are the main countries that are becoming naturalized citizens? Yep. Mexico, Liberia, Laos, so that's all of our Hmong neighbors, Ethiopia, of course, and Somalia. So those are the folks that are becoming naturalized citizens in Minnesota. Of course, when anyone is working with our U.S. government, it can be challenging. Many of our refugee clients are fearful of government, of going to a government office. So that's one thing that we really try to help them with. I had a client actually come to me a few weeks ago, and she was asking about the regime change and what was going to happen if she wasn't a citizen and she used the words regime change, and she was very fearful of the regime change if she wasn't a citizen and what was going to happen to her. So we talk with folks about what happens when the government changes, what to expect. So that's definitely something that's very fearful of a lot of our clients. A lot of our clients have also had disrupted education. If you're on the move a lot as a refugee, you don't really have a stable home. You don't really have a solid education behind you. So we're really helping them with citizenship classes, English classes, kind of helping them to evaluate if they're ready for citizenship or not. And of course, with immigration rules, things change. The fees go up. They update their forms, so suddenly this old version of the form is no longer accepted. You've got to have a new version of the new form. We'll help them with all those processes. We'll help them change their appointment, reschedule an appointment, anything that they need that they're having to deal with immigration will help walk them through that process. And the clients that I see, they're very excited to become citizens. They're very happy to be here. They're very grateful for our U.S. government and their Minnesota neighbors that have offered them a welcoming hand. And they are very happy, of course, when they become citizens because they're eager to vote. So if you're thinking about what is a benefit of becoming a citizen, of course, the League of Women Voters, it is voting. Obviously, a lot of our clients, it's very important for them that they are able to vote and they are very ready to vote. Another benefit of citizenship is, of course, being able to travel on a U.S. passport. If you're not a citizen, there is limits on how long you can be out of the country. And so a lot of our clients, once they become citizens, they are excited to travel and hopefully visit family members. As a citizen, you can also, as I mentioned earlier, you can bring certain family members to the U.S. that you couldn't bring earlier. So if you're not a citizen. So as a citizen, you can sponsor or bring family members to the U.S. and the process goes a little bit faster than if you're not a citizen. Of course, there's certain jobs that you're eligible for if you're a citizen. So our clients also have better employment opportunities. And of course, there's better benefits. You've got more public assistance benefits that you're also eligible for as well when you're a citizen. So we're talking with our clients about all the good reasons to become citizens. And again, just talked a little bit about what we do at International Institute in regards to citizenship, talking about, are you eligible? Okay, let's go through the forms. Let's get all the documents ready to mail to immigration. Something as simple as preparing an envelope. You got to know how much the envelope costs to put in the mail. A lot of our clients, nowadays with email and cell phones, a lot of our clients don't use the mail system very much. So immigration still needs to get that application via regular mail. So we talk about that. We take photos, talk about what the money's going to cost, and like I said, processing and helping them through that whole process that they need for citizenship. And then just to kind of finish up, some other things that we help in our immigration services. If you lose your green card, if your green card goes through the wash, anything like that, will help you replace that document. If you need a travel document so that you can travel, we help with that. We also hand out immigration forms. So a lot of our clients don't have internet access to go to the immigration website and get the form. You can come to our office and we'll give you the form there free of charge. We also answer basic questions about, different immigration procedures that you go through. And of course, we have citizenship classes because you definitely need to know about history and government. You have to be able to answer history and government questions and reading and writing in English. So we offer citizenship classes as well. So I know we're going to have some tests later to check out our history and government knowledge as well. And if you're interested, some other websites of International Institute, that's IIMN.org. And then refugees.org. Refugees.org is actually our national agency. So if you're looking for information about refugees or kind of the big picture of refugees coming into the United States. And then uscis.gov is the official immigration website. So there's only one official immigration website. Some of our clients and even some of you might get lost and called into other immigration type websites, but there's only one official immigration website. So thank you very much. I'm going to be staying with you later, and I'll also have some flyers and other handouts that you might be interested in. So I'll bring that also in the room next door.
Thank you, Corleen.
You're welcome.
We have several questions from the members in the audience. But first of all, I want to mention that you talked about the oath ceremonies.
Yes.
The League of Women Voters has for years been at all of those ceremonies helping to register new citizens. And if you ever want to help with that, just go to the League of Women Voters website and you can find a list or email us and we can give you a list of the ceremonies, and we welcome volunteers. First of all, does the Immigration Institute need volunteers for help? To help?
Absolutely. International Institute of Minnesota always needs volunteers. In fact, I was just talking with our refugee resettlement director, and in the next 3 weeks, it's the end of the fiscal year. And as is human nature, we always like to put things off for the last minute, including our government. So we have 75 new refugees scheduled to come in the next 3 weeks. And those 75 refugees are going to need lots of help. We always need volunteers. We always need volunteers in a variety of ways. I would check out our website for details about that. There's a lot of different things that you could do at International Institute. You could volunteer. There's a lot of different volunteer opportunities. Yes.
What if an immigrant marries a U.S. citizen? Do the requirements change?
If someone marries a U.S. citizen, do the requirements change? So I guess that my follow-up would be, is that person that they're marrying here, or is that person back home? So, back in Ethiopia, Somalia, Sweden, wherever it is. So does that process change? Well, I think what we're probably getting at is in comparison to a refugee. So there are similar things that immigrant would have to go through that a refugee would not have to go through. So similar things, but not exactly the same path as a citizen. As a refugee. So an immigrant coming in, so if I sponsor someone to come as an immigrant and I'm a citizen, the things that we will have to do to get that person a green card are similar, but not exactly the same as a refugee.
Okay. How soon does an immigrant pay taxes?
Immediately. Yep, they're paying taxes. Yep. Taxes are just like you right away.
Can an individual state set its own limits for how many refugees it will accept?
Can the state? Is that what you said? The individual
Right.
state? So, yes. Yes, they can definitely say, this is how many we can handle. There is a refugee, the Minnesota Department of Human Services has a refugee programs office, and they do have a refugee director for the state of Minnesota. And that person definitely has input from the national offices about how many refugees are coming in. I would say it's a conversation. Can they actually stop them? I think that probably gets into politics a little bit, so I can't say exactly if they would have, the final say. I would say it's a collaborative decision.
I can help a little bit with the next question. How long are English classes available? I know all of the community ed programs have classes, English as a second language classes for adults.
Yes. Minnesota Literacy Council is a great resource if you're helping someone to find English classes in the state of Minnesota. Minnesota Literacy Council is basically a resource that you can call and say, the person lives in this zip code and we need English classes. And English classes are happening year-round, free, low-cost English classes in every community.
Are there quotas for different countries on the number of green cards that are issued?
Yes.
Does the government agency have enough staff to process applicants?
That's an interesting question. Does it have enough to process the application? So I will say, I don't work for immigration. I work for a nonprofit that is, the bridge between the client and immigration. So my point of view is obviously a little bit different than I'm sure what an immigration worker would say, what an immigration official says. Like any agency, immigration is restricted or constricted by funds, and they have a limited amount of funds that they have for who they can serve or what they can do with those funds. So do they have enough? Probably not, but I think many agencies could say that, we can always use more money to do more things. So I will say that immigration is very good at shifting their workers depending on where the need is. So sometimes if there is an increase in a certain type of immigration form, then they'll shift workers to that area of work, and I think that's been very helpful. Like for citizenship, for example, I've noticed that things are processing much more quickly recently, and I'm thinking that probably has something to do with the election year. So they probably don't have enough, but I would say that's how it is with many businesses. That's how it is with many agencies. You can always use more funds.
What is being done to accept or require less U.S. education for those with professional licenses and other education from refugees' own country?
One more time so I can process that.
What is being done to accept or require less U.S. education for those with professional licenses and other education from the refugee's own country?
Yeah, so with refugee, that's a good question that I don't really know the answer to. I know that there's definitely some talk about, and there's been some recent talk about having folks with increasing their education. I guess I'm kind of looking at that question through two different things. I'm thinking about, are we talking about employment visas, or are we talking about refugee resettlement numbers? Because someone coming, for example, on an employment visa is a different type of visa, for example, than a refugee. So I'm not sure if we're talking about employment visas or if we're talking about refugees and kind of the education that's required of a refugee. So the answer to that is yes. In fact, that's in regards to, for example, medical careers. That's actually one thing that International Institute works on a lot, is helping folks when they come here. Like you said, they are trained as nurses, doctors, and they're basically coming here and starting over again and having to get retrained and recertified. So I would say yes, that is on our radar, and I think it is also on our government and the Minnesota government radar as well. I don't work so much in that area, but I do think it is an issue that's being addressed.
Are the numbers you cited as Minnesota refugees for the different fiscal years inclusive of the other agencies you listed?
No, the map that I gave, that's just International Institute. So that does not include Minnesota Council of Nonprofits. That doesn't include the other agencies. So that 465 about that it was, that's just International Institute itself. So, and the other agencies are about that same number, maybe a little bit less, kind of fluctuates.
Are immigrants who are convicted of felonies deported? What about misdemeanors?
So misdemeanors, no. Felonies, it would depend on a lot of different things, and it would also depend on where the person is from. There's some countries that we don't currently deport to. So depending on the situation, they might be put in some type of, they might be incarcerated for a certain period of time, and then they may be deported after that. If we don't deport to that country, then we would give them what's called order of supervision, which is similar basically to a probation officer that they have with immigration.
Can they be deported after they've become a citizen?
No, that's why you want to become a citizen, so you don't get deported.
Who decides which states will take refugees and how many?
Yeah, so that's happening at a national level. All of our local refugee resettlement agencies have national agencies in Washington, D.C., so they're all coming together with the help of the State Department and other government entities to determine what state is going to take which refugee and what the good fit is going to be. So that could be this family or this group needs to go here because there's already that community there, or they have a family member there, so we're going to send them to that state. So it's a lot of different government entities that all come together.
Language is so important. Can you tell us how terms like alien and illegal alien have changed?
Yeah, alien and illegal alien and undocumented. Those have definitely, they still come up with immigration. It's, it's a hard, I think that my opinion is those words are definitely used. And just, in some sense, I have to use the word alien in some ways because that's a term that immigration uses, for example. So I want to make sure that our client is familiar with that word. For example, all of our clients have an alien number, which is similar to a social security number. So I have to use that word because that's a word that they're going to come across in a form, and that's a terminology that they're going to hear from immigration. So on one hand, I want to make sure that the client is familiar with that word. But it is changing, and immigration is, and it's not just immigration that's responsible to change those words. It's news. It's how things are shared in the news and the media. So I think it's a variety of, my opinion, I think would be that it's a variety of agencies and the community and media that are kind of responsible for changing those words. I think it's an ongoing process.
What does it mean to say a person or a group sponsors a refugee?
Yeah. So sponsoring a refugee, sponsoring basically means that they're going to be responsible for certain things once that refugee arrives in the U.S. So, for example, at International Institute, some of the refugees that we welcome to the United States, they already have a family tie here. They already have a family member here, maybe a mom or a spouse or some type of a close family relative. That person would be their sponsor. And then we sit down with them and talk with them about what things they're going to be responsible for. Are you going to pick them up at the airport? Are you going to go winter clothes shopping with them? So the word sponsor kind of has different meanings depending in what context it's used. It can be something more informal, for example, or it can be something more formal. For example, as a citizen, like, again, I was saying earlier, as a citizen, I can sponsor my husband to come to the United States and he would get a green card. As a sponsor, I sign a document saying that I'm going to be responsible for certain things for him. So the word sponsor has different meanings in different contexts. It can depend on the type of immigration status. And again, it can be more formal or more informal depending on if the person's coming as a refugee or if they're coming as an immediate family member like a husband or a child, for example.
One last question. Does the International Institute offer the same services to immigrants as it does to refugees?
Yes, absolutely. So one of our programs is refugee resettlement, so that's obviously involving refugees. But our English classes, our computer classes, those are open to immigrants. Those are open to folks that are here not as refugees, asylees, for example. So we do see a lot of refugees in our office, in our agency, because we're a refugee resettlement agency mainly, but we help anyone regardless of if they're a refugee or an immigrant, an asylee, anything like that. Yeah.
Thank you, Corleen.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your attention.